Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rising Stars, where we showcase local Montreal talent on the rise. Today, I have a very special guest with me. I consider her a dear friend in the acting industry, super talented. I am joined by Roxanne Violet. Roxanne, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure. A lot of people don't know this, but we actually started our acting journey together in a way.
Yeah.
We started on the exact same day in the exact same class.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, because for me it was a time where I was discovering more about myself in the domain of arts. I wanted to ask you about your beginnings and that first class in acting.
In acting. So it actually wasn't my first class. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Don't mean to break it to you. I did classes just introductory in like maybe 5 years before that. So I don't really count them because I didn't learn much from it. Because it was far, I wasn't ready for it. So the class we had together was actually the first one where I was like, I'm ready, I'll do that. And yeah, you were my first scene partner on camera.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was doing performances before that, another type of art, which is burlesque, which I've been doing for about 5 years. And that's what made me discover the love for the stage, for performing. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
Which put a stop to anything that was on a stage, and that's when I decided to go for acting, which I've been looking to do for many, many years. And that's where we met in the same school, and it was quite something. I remember being very awkward in our first scene. You were very chill, and that helped a lot. That helped a lot to have somebody who was so laid back. And yeah, taking these classes just make you discover new things about yourself. It makes you grow very quickly. You have a lot of blocks you have to face, especially in that class where we had a scene where I had to scream at you, which was a very hard thing for me. So it's kind of nice to be able to push your boundaries in a place that is still safe and opens up so many things you can do with the different characters, the different scenes, and go places you never would go in your daily life. Exactly. And those classes were just, it was a good way to start and grow.
Exactly. And when you began training, obviously when I started, I was gearing more towards roles that I was more comfortable with. Mm-hmm. For you, was it kind of the same trajectory? Are you now, because I believe it's around 3 years that you're training, are you starting to get more into roles that are more diverse and with some more range, or?
I must say I didn't have a good idea of what I wanted to do. I know I'm more into the drama, into the dark characters, and I was told I have a more darker casting, which makes sense. So naturally that's where I would go. I think slowly I've been pushed through different classes, different training to do different characters. And slowly, I'm opening up to maybe happier characters, which feels good. So slowly working on that.
For sure. And in your trainings, because every class we go to, whether it be in Montreal or anywhere, even just walking on the street, you pick up little things from everywhere. That first year you were training, what were some really big lessons you learned in acting?
The biggest one I would say was to take space and not be afraid to look stupid. Because most of the time you don't. What you think looks stupid is actually what looks good for the scene or just in general. So stepping out of that comfort zone, that's the first thing that really got to me. That was the biggest step. And just like I was saying, the scene where I was screaming at you. At first, it was very scary to think, okay, I might not look good doing this. But in the end, that's what makes the scene more powerful when you just let it out, let it go. Stop wanting to look good and just be there and do the things.
Exactly. And we took a variety of classes. You did as like we all did. What was one class that really left a mark on you, whether it be acting in front of the camera or improv?
The biggest one that left the biggest mark, I think, actually, it's not really an acting class, but it was part of the acting curriculum of the full-time program that I did. It was the voice class. So I always had something where I was having a hard time speaking up, opening up, and we had a class every week where we would work on the voice, and at the end there was some breakthrough, and I even sang in front of people for that class at the end, but I was crying the whole time, so it was not pretty. But it just opened up something about expressing myself more openly, and I want to learn more about how to control and use my voice in a stronger way.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And if there was an actress in Montreal that was just starting out and you saw yourself in her, what advice would you give that girl who's just starting out, who you were in her shoes just a couple years ago?
I would go back to what I said earlier. Don't be afraid to not look good. Just let yourself be in the moment, be in the scene, and follow your instincts. Whatever comes up, do it. It doesn't matter. Worst case, if it's on camera, they'll cut it out. If it's on stage, well, you'll work with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And now, to get more into your training, you spoke about the full-time program that you were attending in 2022, from September to December.
Yeah.
It's intensive from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day, 5 days a week. Take me through that rigorous schedule, because as actors with jobs during the day, normally we only get to work on our craft 1 or 2 hours at night. For those 10 weeks, it was every day, 8-9 hours a day. Tell me how you approach that learning curve at the beginning and throughout the program.
I'm the kind of person, when I decide to do something, I'm very dedicated. So for me, it was like a job. You just go. I would wake up 2 hours before, because I personally like to have my morning. So I would wake up 2 hours before, spend an hour and a half home, go to the school, and to me, every moment of the training matters. It's funny, I didn't take notes in class, because acting is very about, as I said, intuition, what you feel, what moves through you. And so it's about you take in. There's many moments where it gets hard, moments where it's easy. In this kind of program, sometimes it can hit you hard. You can feel like you're failing because you get tired of all the many hours. We had a lot of physical activities. We had a lot of emotional training too. And a lot was expected from us. So from there's moments where you're drained, because everything you do doesn't work. It doesn't work for many weeks in a row, and you see others succeed and you're happy for them, but it gets even harder for us. And you just have to work hard on staying motivated and pushing through. And for most of us, it paid off to push through. And you get those little wins, those moments where you're proud of yourself, where you feel that something changed. So to me, it was 100% focus. I go there, I do the work, I go home, do more work at home to prepare for the next day or the next week. Some nights I still needed a rest though, of course. But I was lucky enough that I was not working at the same time. I had a break at the time, so I could focus fully. I know some other students were also working, and it was taking a big hit on them. But it's worth it. It's worth the growth that came from it.
100%. And like you said, there's a point in your acting career where self-doubt starts to creep in. You see others having success, and as an actress, you're very talented. I've worked with you. But seeing others have success, sometimes you're like, yeah, but maybe I'm not doing something right. How did you deal with those feelings when you were unmotivated? What kept you motivated? Like you said, you kept doing the work, but was there other little things that kind of kept you on the right path?
Well, that's something that's always going to happen. The self-doubt, it comes and goes. There's moments that even after the training, it happens, what keeps me going is something we discovered in the classes, is the why. Why do you do it? Why are you acting? And once you find this deep down, what you have deep down, why you're acting, when I doubt myself, I try to go back and think why, this why that I found. And it just gives this little push to keep going. And I also tell myself there's so many things you can do in your life, so many things to explore. And I want to be the person who years later I can look back at my life and say I did everything I could. I did not give up, and I just went for any dreams that I have, because I have many of them. They come and go, they change. But as long as you keep going, as long as you still have pleasure in it, it's a good reason to keep going.
100%. 100%. And it's funny you bring up the why of acting, because my next question was geared more towards, from the training, what were your biggest takeaways and how are you implementing them now when you're researching a character that you might audition for or you might get cast as?
So in the training, we learned a lot about really understanding where the character comes from, really having empathy, no matter if you agree with them or not. So I have a lot of empathy. I can understand someone else's point of view, even when it's different than mine. So I really take the time. First, I read the whole script. It's really important. You can find a lot of information there. And then I start to just analyze the emotions that comes and goes through the script. And then you can find a little bit more depth. And sometimes we try to find something very complex. Sometimes it's very simple. It can be someone's angry, you don't need to go find deeper, but sometimes you do. So it's really experimenting. Once you have the script, once you learn about the character, find ways to connect emotionally with the character. So I like to do finding things in my life that may be similar and trying to use this as a way to connect with where the person, the character is. And that's something I've learned through the training, how I can ask myself questions. Okay, why do I feel? So I usually speak in the I when I'm working on a character. So why do I feel that way? Why am I angry that this person said that? Where does it come from? And it's something I'm still working on developing.
Of course.
Because it doesn't always come naturally. Some characters, they just come. You understand them right away. Others take a little bit more time, trial and error, running the scene a few times. When you have the chance to do the scene multiple times before having to perform it, it's always a gift, because you can discover so many things, especially if you can do it with the other actor. Because doing it by yourself, you don't have to listen to anyone. So what is also really important is to listen to what the other person is saying, not just the words, but their emotions,
cadence.
And you can always be surprised. So it's good to run it a few times with the other actor too.
100%. 100%. And speaking of characters, in your acting journey, has there been one character you've played that you found super challenging or a bit harder than the others?
There are many of them. They all have their challenges. I would say there was one recently I had to do for a class, which, if you think about it, it was very hard to connect to it, because she felt, and now it sounds like I'm judging because I'm done with the character, so I'm judging my character, which we were taught not to do. She was very entitled and getting really angry at someone because she felt entitled to the person's proper care or the person's attention, which to me didn't relate so easily. And through some work with the teacher, we managed to find actually a way to remove this idea of being entitled, because the person doesn't think she's entitled. She has a real pain of not having what she needs. So again, it's finding this compassion. It takes some time, but eventually you can find it. Sometimes it does take a lot of work, a lot of going deep, finding things that you didn't even realize you could connect to.
Yeah.
But there's always a way.
Has there ever been a surprising moment when you're researching a character where you connect to something you would have never thought you would connect to, and you're like, oh my, I didn't even know that was possible?
In this way, I'm not sure I have one that comes, but to connect in a way that surprised me, that I didn't know was something that could make me emotional. You actually saw it in one of the classes.
I did.
I was playing a sister, and there was something, we're having a fight. The two sisters were having a fight, and for some reason it just didn't work.
Yeah.
We couldn't connect to the whole sister connection. And then the teacher looks at me and she just asked me, do you have a sister? And I said yes. And in my brain, I thought a second thing. I didn't say it out loud. I thought, but I'm not close to them. And at that point, it just triggered some emotional response that I just started crying.
Yeah.
And then the teacher was like, okay, start the scene now. And we started it, and it, for me at least, it could really connect right away. So this was a surprise because I never thought this relationship with my sisters not being close would trigger something within me. I always thought, yeah, it's fine. And turns out there's something that can be used there for a scene like this.
Always.
Yeah.
There's always things on this that we could take and grab and use in our performance. It was a beautiful performance, by the way. I was witnessing it. I want to switch now more to like a lighthearted note of the interview. I want to know about your influences artistically, whether it be actresses, musical artists that play a role in your acting.
Yeah, so the moment I realized I wanted to act is when I first saw Helena Bonham Carter on the screen. I just fell in love with her. She inspired me through my whole teenage years to just be myself, to learn that it's okay to be different. So she always has been a big influence, not just for acting, but also in my life in general. And as I learned more about acting, there's still this Winton that I love deeply because she's so versatile. She does a lot of art house, but also big things. She's being very creative everywhere. So those would be my two biggest inspiration when it comes to acting.
Yeah. And I always ask this question. I've asked you before in the past. My apologies, I forget. But what's a role in a movie, a certain character that you would have loved to play?
Well, it goes back to what I just said. I would love to play Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd.
Beautiful.
And because it's a play, maybe someday that's something I can do, but I have to learn to sing before that.
There we go. And are you taking vocal classes? And
it's on the way, not yet, but that's something I do want to learn.
Awesome. And what are some current projects that are happening right now with you and them?
With me and them?
Yeah.
I don't have any project going on right now. I'm working on finding some. I actually have some friends with whom we want to make some scenes, work on some short films. So that's some little projects on the side. And I'm looking maybe to put on a play, but there's nothing solid yet.
Okay. And as for training, are you still training? Are you still taking classes at night?
I am. So I went back to the same school we've been, HOA, which...
House of Actors.
Yeah, House of Actors, which they now have a advanced class, part-time, with a new teacher, which is amazing. And this is where I really get more in depth than I ever been, in a place that feels safe.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to go back. And maybe also something I haven't done yet is I want to take classes in French, because I've only trained in English so far, even though it's not my first language. And the instincts kind of don't come the same way in a different language. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm going to be looking into.
For sure, for sure. And as for goals heading forward for the next year, the next 5 years, where does Roxanne Violet find herself in the acting industry?
Well, I definitely want to go back to my roots, get back into performing on stage as a burlesquer, but also as an actor, so I want to have a solid foundation in both, so I can do stage performances but also work on films. I must say I loved doing theater, but I've started feeling a bit more interest in films now that I've done a few short films, so I definitely want to do some features. I would love to, and I also have some stories I want to write based on my experiences, and I might want to make some feature or some short films.
For sure.
Yeah.
And just to touch on, we spoke about burlesque. How has kind of performing as a burlesque artist influenced you in terms of your acting?
So how burlesque influenced me the most is to be confident in my body and to be confident on taking space. So I'm not 100% yet. I don't think anyone really, always something we can learn, right?
Of course.
But from the burlesque, it's really just being able to trust my body, because in acting, often something we find is that you stand there, you say your lines, but you don't know what to do with your body.
Yeah.
So this taught me really to just be in the body. It's there. You have to trust it. It's going to do the work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's a piece of art that recently touched you as an artist, that motivated you or made you happy or sad or just made you smile?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
A piece of art recently. That's
I got you. It's not my
I
question.
know you got me. I know.
It's John, the director. It's a good one.
A piece of art or a film. I'm trying to think. What did I watch recently? I tend to watch things and then they kind of just, I love them, but they just float around.
Yeah.
I would have to go research them to remember the names. Oh, actually, it's surprising. I've been watching a lot of Pixar recently.
Yeah, me too. Up.
Oh, I watched Inside Out,
I've never
which
seen
was really interesting, but I must say I watched Soul last week. Soul was really interesting. So I don't know if you know about it, but it's a lot about the reason we live.
Yeah.
Like, what is the spark for life? So I think that would be the one right now, the most recent one. I think it touches on being present and enjoying every moment of life.
Of course.
Yeah, it's surprising for someone who was inspired by horror as a first form of art to now I'm like a Pixar
lighthearted.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. My last question, and it just popped into my head because I'm super curious about it. How did you feel the first time seeing yourself on camera performing? Because I know the first time it happened to me, I was like,
Yeah. For acting, it was hard. The first time, especially when you're new and you don't know what to do with yourself.
Yeah.
Like I said, the first scene we did was pretty awkward.
Yeah.
And it was on camera. It was hard. And I had to learn to just distance myself and tell myself, would I be this harsh with someone else? Like, I was looking at our scene and I would just see me and be telling myself, oh my God, this is so bad. But I would never have said that about you.
Exactly.
So I'm learning about distancing.
Yeah.
And it's much better now. Now I can observe more just the acting, what was good, what can change, what can be worked on. Not in a critical about how I look, but more in a critical about how can I work on the art.
Of course.
But first time was definitely hard.
Yeah. And just to bounce off of that, I think as an actor or actress, when you start developing healthy self-love more and more in your career, I think it helps you not to become an egomaniac, like, I love myself. But I think that self-love really helps with that, like you said, not to judge yourself too hard in your performances.
Yeah, and your flaws can also be your strengths. It's what makes you different than the others.
Exactly.
And you learn to use them instead of trying to get rid of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. Roxanne, thank you so much
for
the interview today. It was a pleasure seeing you again.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing what new projects come about in your career.
hopefully something soon.
For sure, for sure. I have no doubt about it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.